She was the only one who was with me with him before he put back and forth.
This, right here, is the voice of a killer. It is the voice of the man who brutally murdered a sweet, innocent 16-year-old girl who had a bright future ahead of her. Now, he is plotting to kill his childhood friend, who was the last person to see him alive with the victim. Brittney Gregory was 16 years old when she disappeared from her hometown on the Jersey Shore, July 11, 2004. Brittney lived in Brick Township, New Jersey, and was the youngest of 4 siblings. They lived with their father, and she was closest with her older 20-year-old sister, Brianna. Brittney was loved by many in her community and school. She had a 100 average in her academics, helped her teachers and fellow students out, and aspired to be a forensic scientist. She had a bright future ahead of her. Brittney wanted to solve crimes, but unfortunately became the mystery herself. She'd been trying to find a ride to her boyfriend's house after an argument in order to rekindle things on the night that she had disappeared. But did things go south? And did a young lover's quarrel turn into a crime? Did she ever make it to her boyfriend's house to begin with? Or was it her father's dark secret that ended up costing him his daughter's life? July 11th, 2004. On the morning of Sunday, July 11th, Brittney calls her boyfriend in order to rekindle their broken relationship. They had broken up as recently as July 9th and had last seen each other the day before. However, he is at the beach with friends, and so she hangs up on him. Later that evening, around 8:30 p.m., Brittney calls her sister, Brianna, looking for a ride to her ex-boyfriend's place. Brianna is out of town at the time, visiting her own boyfriend, and won't be back until later. Brianna ends up falling asleep at her boyfriend's place and doesn't return home until the next morning. July 12th, 2004. Brianna returns home the next morning to find Brittney gone. The bed has not been slept in, and she left all her stuff behind. Brianna goes down to the police department to file a missing persons report, worried something happened to her little sister. No one can get in contact with her. Brianna even calls Brittney's ex-boyfriend, but he has not seen her since they broke up. Detectives Mark Brine and Elliot Morgan are assigned to the case that same day. By then, it had been nearly 24 hours since Brianna had last heard from her sister. The 2 detectives start by going house to house in the neighborhood in an attempt to get a picture of locals and gather information from them. The detectives then investigate Brittney's home and find that everything she owned was still in place. She had not taken her phone, makeup, or anything of value. They begin to suspect that she has been abducted.
If there was an abduction, most victims are killed within 24 hours. By the time we got called, we were past that.
They then turn to the family to ask questions and learn some concerning news. Brittney had been looking for a ride to her boyfriend's house after a relationship-breaking argument. Brianna told police about her sister's boyfriend, 18-year-old John Fitzgerald. The 2 had broken up recently, after dating for nearly a year and a half, which was an immediate red flag. However, friends and family had nothing bad to say about John. He was well-liked, and they had a typical high school relationship. They were glued to one another's side for most of their relationship. The investigators bring John in for questioning that day. John didn't realize that Brittney was still missing and was growing concerned for her well-being. He tells police that he had last spoken to her over the phone on Sunday morning, but she had hung up on him when she learned he was at the beach with friends. She'd been looking to talk things out face-to-face. John had last seen Brittney on Saturday, July 10th. He reveals that they had broken up because he accused her of kissing another boy, so he kissed another girl and she found out. She had given him a letter that was self-degrading. She mentioned multiple times that she didn't deserve him, called herself names, but asked for them to at least be friends. At one point in the letter, she mentions possibly harming herself, which made detectives really worried. Part of the letter said, "If I can't have you, I don't want to live." They schedule a polygraph exam with John at a later date, which he agrees to. They want to make sure he isn't lying about their argument in the letter. The detectives are worried that the agreement is another ploy to appear innocent, but they have no hard evidence to hold John there, and so he is released. But before leaving, John gives the police a possible clue to her whereabouts. Brittney used to travel through a wooded area in order to reach his house, and it's possible she is lost or injured within the woods. The woods are the first place investigators look to outside of Brittney's home. They consider it the next logical place to search since it seems Brittney could not find a ride to her boyfriend's, and she was desperate. They put together search teams, but it was going to be very difficult to find her in the woods. After expanding their search and intensely looking for 3 days, there was still no sign of Brittany. July 13th to 15th, 2004. During those 3 days, a candlelight vigil was held for Brittany, and the family started reaching out to the community for help. But unfortunately, all the phone calls and possible leads reported by the loving community ended up being dead ends. The investigators then decided to turn to Brittany's friends, who were all very worried about her. She had a very close group of friends who knew about Brittany's family that had yet to be reported on. What they told the police made the detectives suspicious of her home life and those living there. With no concrete evidence against Brittany's boyfriend, nor any evidence of Brittany's remains within the woods, the detectives begin to investigate the family itself. Her friends and teachers report that they never would have known she was facing any sort of hardship at home based on her personality, but there were whispers of drug use. The detectives were able to get a hold of Brittany's journal and discover the truth of what was happening behind closed doors. In her diary, Brittany referred to her family as disturbed, but she always looked on the bright side of things and tried to keep her head high. Now knowing about Brittany's father's use of drugs, the investigators narrow their sights on their home, with drug dealers and drug users coming in and out of the house and possibly interacting with Brittany. They believe one of them could be the abductor or murderer. They begin questioning the father, Joe Dunn. They want to know who was around the house on the day Brittany disappeared. While Joe Dunn could not provide any useful information, another one of Brittany's sisters could. Bobby Joe mentions her ex-boyfriend, Anthony Geiger, aka Tony. Bobby Joe reported that Tony was too friendly with her little sister, and it was the source of many of their arguments and eventually led to their breakup. Bobby Joe provided information about her ex-boyfriend, and one of the things that stuck out the most was the description of his car. The car Bobby Joe describes matches one that neighbors reported seeing around the neighborhood at the time of Brittany's disappearance. Tony was located at his home with his new girlfriend in Brielle, New Jersey. He lived only 6 miles from Brittany's home. Tony was upset to learn he was being questioned about her disappearance, but his girlfriend acted as his alibi. This meant that investigators once again had no hard evidence to make an arrest. July 16th, 2004. 5 days after Brittany's disappearance, her boyfriend John Fitzgerald holds true to his word and comes in for the polygraph exam. During the exam, the detectives described him as soft-spoken and genuine. Throughout the interrogation, John tells the truth, and the investigators start to believe that he is not the person they are looking for. Just when things seem to be coming to a dead end, the investigators receive a call from an informant who is unnamed to protect their identity. The informant stated that the man he buys stolen goods from hurt his back while digging in the sand. The new suspect is identified as 38-year-old Jack Fuller. Jack Fuller was no stranger to police encounters, and there were multiple files on record prior to the investigation. He'd been involved with robberies before. Jack Fuller was a dangerous and unpredictable man who was very familiar with the inside of a jail cell and was also very familiar with Brittany's father, Joe Dunn. They associated because of Joe Dunn's use of drugs, and it became clear that Brittany had come across this man on multiple occasions because of her father. The police proceed with using the informant to gather more information about Brittany's whereabouts. At this point in the investigation, they no longer expect to find her alive. The informant plans to meet with Jack Fuller, and they outfit him with a wire to learn more. The investigators set up a perimeter around the convenience store the informant and Jack Fuller were meeting at. They listen into the conversation the entire time. They're hoping to learn the location of the body. While Jack Fuller doesn't reveal any information on where he buried Brittany, he does reveal a name and a plot to kill again.
He was the only one
The investigators identify the man Jack Fuller plans on silencing. Tommy Long is another drug abuser and criminal that has been friends with Jack Fuller since childhood. He knows that Jack Fuller was the last person to see Brittany alive. Now the police are in a race against time to save another criminal from Jack Fuller's murderous hands. July 20th, 2004. After finding Tommy's last known address and going to survey the area, they spot Jack Fuller's car and realize he has beaten them to the area. Jack is found holding a gasoline canister and they fear the worst. In order to stop Jack Fuller from possibly burning any sort of evidence, they arrest him under suspicion of murder. His car is sent to forensics, but they still have not located Tommy Long, and they do not know whether Jack Fuller has already taken his life yet or not. They eventually find him at his house and bring him down to the police department for questioning. At first, he doesn't reveal any information and denies knowing anything. They continue questioning Tommy and learn that he grew up around the corner from Jack. Since they are childhood friends, Tommy is loyal to Jack and wants to protect him. That is, until the police play the recording they captured thanks to their informant. Tommy is surprised and hurt that his childhood friend is out to get him and understands he is not safe as long as Jack Fuller is free. So, he starts talking. Tommy explains that he and Jack were out driving in Jack's car. They stopped by Brittany's father Joe's house. When Jack got back in the driver's seat, he told Tommy he was going to drop him off. Then, the rear passenger door opened, and he turned to see a young white female getting into the car. It was Brittney Gregory. In her desperate attempt to find a ride to her boyfriend's house, she knowingly gets into the car with one of her father's dangerous associates. Tommy is dropped off at his house, and he sees Jack drive off with Brittany. The investigators move on to questioning Jack Fuller. He pretends to be confused as to why he has been arrested, and they play the tape for him. He demands an attorney. One of the investigators revealed that when he told the family, it was horrible, and the father, Joe Dunn, revealed to him that they had run into Jack. Jack had hugged him and said, "I hope you find her." Jack Fuller is now behind bars, but without physical evidence, without the remains, the charges could be dropped, and Jack could be set free. But then, the investigators receive another phone call. On the line is a woman who claims that Jack abducted her. She says she will take them to the place where Jack buried Brittany. The woman was from Pennsylvania and had heard about Jack Fuller's arrest on TV. She had been held as a hostage by Jack from October to November of 2003. At the time, she was into drugs, and Jack baited her with free drugs. He held her at his home against her will, but she was able to escape. Since she was often in his car, she knew a spot where he liked to go get high and believed that was where he buried Brittany. He had said to her that this would be the perfect place to bury a body. The area that the woman mentioned was known to be a very sandy area. Compared to what the informant told the detectives, it seemed like a match. The spot was not far from Brittany's house, but it was a large area to search. They called in K-9, State Police, New Jersey Corrections, Ocean County Corrections, and more to help with the search. July 28, 2004. It took 8 days of searching before the authorities finally discovered what they were looking for. For one detective, the death of someone's young daughter hit too close to home, but the investigation continued. More information was revealed in time. Jack was seen by an officer a few days after Brittany's disappearance in the area he buried her. He claimed he was looking for his dog, but in reality, he was checking on the gravesite. Blood splatters belonging to Brittany were also found in the interior of his car. Based on the evidence, the police were able to uncover how she died. Jack Fuller had lashed out and beat her to death. October 18th, 2005. On October 18th, 2005, over a year after Brittany's death, Jack Fuller pleads guilty to the first-degree murder of her death. He is sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel because that makes this video possible. And here's another one you might enjoy.